Good morning, everyone. We've got an audience joining us from across the continent and beyond today, and it is so exciting to have you back for another Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants broadcast. Now, we've been the virtual education partner of the Toronto Zoo for several years now, and what we do broadly is bring conservation, adventure, and science into classrooms around the world through like a gazillion live free interactive broadcasts, over 40 every single month, featuring amazing scientists and explorers from around the world. But I must say, don't tell anyone else. But the Toronto Zoo is basically my favorite partner that I like to do amazing programs with every single month. Last month, we got the chance to hang out with them and learn about the incredible work that they were doing for nutrition for animals in conjunction with our partners at the University of Toronto Scarborough campus. And today, we're going beyond what helps them keep animals alive to talk about what helps them make animals thrive at the zoo. The Toronto Zoo is an accredited zoo. They do incredible work to save and protect and showcase the natural world. And so today, we're going to learn about animal enrichment, one of my very favorite topics, in conjunction with one of my very favorite animals, and that is the polar bear. So I'm going to turn it over to Mary Ellen and Morgan, joining us live at Juno's exhibit to tell us a little bit more. Thank you so much for joining us, and let's dive in. Hi.
Hello. Thank you so much, Jesse. I absolutely love your introductions to the zoo. It is quite possibly my favorite part of the broadcast, except of course the animals. They are the real star. So we have Juno coming out for us here in just a moment. But if you don't mind, Jesse, I'm going to have you toss up our land acknowledgement here, just to make sure that we would like to acknowledge that the land that we are standing on is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississauga of the Credit, the Anishinaabeg, the Chippewa, and the Haudenosaunee and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. We'd also like to acknowledge that the Toronto is covered by Treaty 13, with the Mississauga of the Credit and the Williams Treaty, signed with multiple Mississauga and Chippewa bands. All right, and with that, we are going to turn the camera on because I know the real star is coming out behind us, but I will just like to say, for anyone who's been tracking Toronto weather, not sure if that's something you like to do, it is currently freezing rain here. So if suddenly, after we meet Juno, Morgan and I are in a different location, maybe inside in a tropical rainforest, that's why. We are currently undercover right now, but it is quite chilly here. And we're going to talk about actually how that's a good thing for our polar bears in just a moment. Not so great for us, though. So let's turn our camera around here. And we are going to get up close and personal with Juno and learn a little bit about something called enrichment. Okay, so we're going to turn the camera. And what perfect timing, actually. Juno's coming over, so we actually, a little bit of movie magic here for everybody. We set this up right before we started filming. I don't know if anyone saw, but behind us, there wasn't a polar bear, but there was a person. And that person is one of our keepers named Erica, and she came out and actually set a few enrichments up for us. Now we're gonna go into a deeper understanding of what enrichment is when Morgan talks in just a few moments here. But essentially, think about it like your toys and your activities, things that you do at home that help you to learn things. So at different points of your life, you might have needed different toys. When you're a baby and you're first learning to walk or crawl, you have toys and items in your life that help give you stability and they help you move. Then you have to learn how to use utensils, forks, and knives, and that can be complicated sometimes because it means learning how to use different muscles and figuring out and navigating the world around you. We have similar enrichments for animals as well, and we look at how their different stages of life help them. And these enrichments can help them with something called foraging, which is what Juno's doing right now, actually. She's looking for food around her. And currently I see she's got some cantaloupe and some, I think, sweet potato or carrots. I see something very bright orange. So she's got some yummy snacks in there with her. And you might also notice she has a pine tree in the side. And this pine tree isn't there for her to eat, but what it is there for is for her to smell. So that's another type of enrichment that we can use, and we can provide them with that kind of new sensory experiment that they may not already have an exposure to. So animals coming from different climates. Now, obviously, polar bears are from North America. They can come from up north. But there aren't always a lot of trees in some of the areas that they live. Some of them live fully on ice all year round. So introducing a pine tree into her exhibit gives her a new sensory to look at or feel. And we're really just trying to give her things to do, different ways to stimulate her brain and her foraging skills and abilities. And this changes for every single animal that we see here at the zoo. And Morgan's going to teach us a little bit about our studying of enrichments in just a moment or two here. But think about every animal and all their different needs. For example here, I have a great big barrel, okay? This is pretty cool. We're going to get up close on it here. Now, this wasn't played with by Juno, but it was a grizzly bear. So Samson and Shente are two grizzly bears who live in the Canadian domain. They went at this barrel, okay? And you can see there's lots and lots of punctures and different claw marks in it. Now, although I can lift it up pretty easily, it is heavy, and it's a pretty tough barrel, and there's no way that I can rip through this myself as a human. So just think about the energy and effort that this took for a bear to jump on and flatten like a pancake. I definitely could never do that. I'd probably fall off of it first. And Juno has a few objects. You can actually see a similar barrel in her exhibit there that has also already been crushed. And that one is probably on its way out. It's no longer as useful to us because of that squish in the middle that she's done. They're no longer really able to actually get food out of it, and they can actually get stuck inside of it now. So it can become a safety hazard for them. So that will be removed, and she'll get herself a new barrel. Now, animals like polar bears, rhinos, tigers, lions, giraffes, all the really big, strong ones, they can go through toys and enrichments really quickly. And this is an issue that we find is they can be expensive. Those big barrels are not cheap, neither are their other items. So there's actually a way for all of you watching today, if you've ever wanted to sponsor an animal here at the Toronto Zoo, around the holiday time, we have something called the Enrichment Giving Tree. And you can actually gift enrichment to an animal. And then after we've purchased it, we like to put their videos up on social media so that you can see them using their enrichment. So we have lots of videos out there. But for example, this one here is for Delilah the caribou. I know it's an ostrich on the front. We're just going to pretend it's a caribou. And this is for target training for her, for medical training. So we like to train some of our animals to help with their own medical procedures so they're not scared when they have to see the vets or a doctor or anything like that. So she wants a target for Christmas. We have a popcorn maker for our Maasai giraffes. You may not know it, but Maasai giraffes love popcorn. They love popcorn. They'd go to the movies every day if they could. People behind them may not be so happy. They probably wouldn't be able to see over their heads, but they love themselves some popcorn. So they're asking for a popcorn maker for Christmas. And here we have Wally the orangutan, which is our newest addition to the zoo. Baby Wally, he is asking for a foam machine for Christmas. So if you're interested in this, you can check out the Toronto Zoo website. It's just torontozoo.com. Check out our enrichment giving tree, and maybe you, your family, your friends, anyone like that can maybe sponsor and help us buy a few enrichments items for our friends here at the zoo. All right, with that, we're going to turn it back to Juno and also hand it off to Morgan to learn a little bit more about the science behind enrichments.
Hello, everyone. So it wouldn't be a Toronto Zoo broadcast if I didn't promote the science that happens here. A little bit of a science lover, and I love to promote all of the amazing things that we do here because, as you see, Juno is using all of these items, but it's really important for us to learn why and if they're actually helping her and if they're leading to her overall well-being. So as scientists at the zoo, we can do behavior research. So I brought some props along with me. So we have an amazing welfare team that will come and watch our bears like Juno and assess her behaviors. So they can do different things like monitor the temperatures, monitor how many guests are around the exhibit. A really big thing is sound measuring. So they will use a fancy device like this one and monitor the sound levels that are both around the exhibits and within the exhibits without the animals in them, of course. So they will do noise audits, so they will stand inside of the exhibit and take noise levels at different times throughout the day. This also helps us monitor to see if they're using their different enrichments that we provide them. So this is an example of a sheet that a researcher would use. So it looks nothing special, but all of these codes that are on it are coding for different things that Juno was doing throughout this hour. So a researcher can sit here and say how many visitors were here at each moment, what the noise level was, and different codes for what she was doing throughout that moment. These can all then lead to a full analysis of how her day was. We can then also use that to work with our different science teams. So here at the Toronto Zoo, our science teams work really hard together to make sure that all of their things are happy and healthy between enrichment, nutrition, and health. So we can take these observations that our researchers do, and we can couple it up with, let's say, nutrition. So if she didn't eat that day, we can take a look back at her behaviors and see, was it a bit more noisy than normal? Were there more guests than normal? Was it maybe a hotter day? Polar bears really fluctuate with the weather on what their activity levels are. So those different pieces of information are really important to have us be able to look back on. So another thing that I want to talk about that is really linked to enrichment items are other behaviors called stereotypic behaviors. Big word, I know. We can think of these kind of as habits. You want to see Juno, not me. So these different habits or these different behaviors to humans seem like they're behaviors with no purpose or goal, and they're very often repetitive. So for example, our bears here, you might see them maybe sucking on their tongue or pacing back and forth, maybe some head weaving. And as humans, we might look at that and think, oh no, this means they're uncomfortable. But this is why science and research is important, because we've actually shown that it doesn't mean that they're uncomfortable. These are often habits that bears who are hand raised in zoos form because that's just what they've gotten used to. So they've gotten used to, if they're pacing a little bit more, they might know that a keeper will bring out these awesome enrichment items to give them some more stimulation. Or when Juno was a baby and she was sucking on her tongue, that might have been from when she would suck on a bottle because she was hand raised. So those different behaviors are all linked to their past, and that's why it's really important that we can study them. One last thing is we can also relate them back to the wild animals. It's really hard to sit out in the North Pole and watch an animal all day. We're cold just here in Toronto watching Juno. So it's really hard to sit there and monitor these animals. But luckily, because we've had the animals here at the zoo, we can monitor their behaviors and see how they match with the behaviors in the wild. Let's see what Juno's up to.
So we'll say, just before we pass it over to UTSC here, you might have noticed Juno in the background. She's standing on her back legs right now. And what she's actually jumping up against is the human door to her enrichment. And my best guess for this right now is the keeper just came out a few minutes ago and put out a portion of Juno's food, because this is a little bit early for her to get her kind of full afternoon meal. And so we asked for this video if just a small portion can get put out just for us to be here right now to film with her. And so she's probably saying, hey, I know there's more coming. What's going on? So she's very interested, and they can also hear really well. So odds are I can see a light on through that door. There's probably the keeper still back there, and Juno can hear them moving around, doing prep. We have 4 other bears here at the zoo as well. If we look to our left here, we can see one of them in the far, far distance. Pretty sure this is one of her brothers. He's way back there. This is one of our other exhibits. And so they can hear the keepers moving around, getting other things prepped and ready for other bears. And they're interested. They want to know what's happening. They want to know what's going on. So that's why Juno was going on a little bit of an adventure, trying to kind of figure out what she's going to do next today. But with that, we will pass it back to you, Jesse, and head it over to UTSC.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Mary Ellen and Morgan. I felt the same way. My wife was baking Christmas cookies the other day, and I was just standing at the kitchen door waiting until I was able to have some. It was really delightful. By the way, I want to note for our students at home, we've got students from all over North America today, and it's so amazing how lucky we have been in the Toronto Zoo series with animals coming right up to the camera. I've been to the Toronto Zoo at least 20 times, and I can tell you I've had the polar bear come up to the window maybe twice ever in that time. So the fact that we got to see Juno play around with the ball and come right up to the window is just, we're all so lucky together. Now, as Mary Ellen mentioned, this is our joint program series between the Toronto Zoo and the University of Toronto Scarborough campus. So I'm going to turn it over to Christine McCall in a minute, who's going to walk through some animal enrichment research that she's been up to and that she wants to highlight with us today. And then, folks, we're going to dive in with all your questions. So, Christine, welcome to the broadcast. Thanks for joining us today for the first time ever here at Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants.
Thank you for having me.
It's so exciting. Now, your presentation's up. You are good to go, and I'll leave you to take us away.
Hi, everybody. Like Jesse said, my name is Christine McCall, and I'm a vivarium director for one of the lab animal facilities here at the University of Toronto. And I'm going to go over the environmental enrichment as well. I'm going to just cover it in general and just share with you sort of how we achieve this in our everyday lives of the different animal species we were housing in our vivarium. So basically, it's kind of been touched on, so I might move through this a little quickly, but basically the environmental enrichment refers to basically something that's added to or a change to the animal's physical environment. And this is really just to enhance the quality of the animal care and really identifying and providing stimuli for the animal. So we really want to optimize their psychological and physiological well-being. And it's really important that an enriched environment allows animals to perform natural behaviors and permits them to be more active and increases animals' control over their environment. So adding enrichment value to an enclosure means going beyond basic necessities of food, water, and shelter. Enrichment is just as essential as animals' nutrition and their vet care. So first, animal welfare is generally the first and foremost priority in an enrichment program. So most enrichment programs today provide, enclosures with new experiences designed to stimulate and encourage species-typical behaviors. So this applies to lab animals as well. So although much research has been conducted over the last 100 years to discover sort of optimal techniques for reducing stress and improving the physical and mental health of captive and confined animals, the search for the most effective kind of enrichment for every species out there is still ongoing. So there's basically 5 types of enrichment, and I'll just touch very briefly on each one. So we have social enrichment. So this is anything that includes social interaction. So this is often with another live animal. So this is a cage mate. And sometimes this is even just an animal that's not sharing the physical environment, but they can see another animal and use their senses and know that they're there. We also have cognitive enrichment. So this is anything that is new or challenging that will make the animal think, be challenged, or become curious. We have enrichment of physical habitat. So this is exactly how it sounds, something that is added to make their habitat more dynamic, comfortable, and fun. And then sensory enrichment. So that's anything that stimulates the animal's senses, such as scratch boards, new smells, moving toys, and just different sounds. And then we have food enrichment, which involves either new food items or different ways for the animals to get their food. So I'm sure you already know the importance of enrichment for companion animals like dogs and cats, and for zoo animals that has just been covered now. But what about other animals? So in our lab animal facility, we house a variety of different animal species for different purposes. So I'll take you through our program and what's involved. So we have rodents. So this includes mice and rats. So rodents are prey animals that hide when they feel threatened by a predator. So we basically provide these guys an igloo, and this gives them the ability to hide from a potential aggressor, and also provides shelter for pups. So if there's any little babies there, it gives them, protects them from any environmental changes. And quite often, if there's a leaky bottle, it can help mom move the babies up off the wet floor. So providing environmental enrichment, such as nesting material, gives these guys the opportunity to build complex nests, which they love. And enrichment items such as nesting material, shelters, gnawing, and foraging materials also work best for these guys, and it helps them exhibit natural behaviors of mice and rats. And then we have the African clawed frog. So these guys are also known as xenopus. So this is a species that is fully aquatic. They're nocturnal, so they are only active at night. They're filter feeders, so they feed on the bottom of their tanks. And they typically sit motionless. They're either found at the top of their tank, floating near the surface of the water, or found at the bottom of their tank. The male xenopus can be quite dominant, or they can be submissive. So they basically establish a hierarchy within their colony there. They also have feed aggression, which is common among groups. So they'll fight over food items. These guys have ravenous appetites. So we offer these guys, PVC tubes, artificial plants, lily pads, and this gives submissive animals shelter to decrease the exposure to this type of aggression. And then we have zebrafish. So these guys are common fish that are found in a lot of research facilities. These guys exhibit exploratory, fleeing, and schooling and hiding behavior. Zebrafish are social animals, and they tend to group together in groups called shoalings. And zebrafish, basically shoal for foraging reasons, social reasons, or just to avoid predators. Zebrafish also exhibit behavior called schooling. So schooling is a more synchronized way of swimming as a defense mechanism to avoid predators. And basically schooling occurs when all fish swim in the same direction as a group. Zebrafish also exhibit dominant and submissive relationships. So dominant fish will stay towards the top of the tank, and the submissive guys will hang out by the bottom. So enrichment items such as, artificial plants, things like that will help shelter the animals from any aggression that might be seen with dominant fish. And then we have guppies. So guppies are a small fish as well. These guys are peaceful, they're adaptable, and they're resilient creatures. They're actually quite friendly amongst each other for the most part, but there can also be some bullying, and they can fight, particularly if there's a huge difference in size. So guppies thrive in really lush environments. So we tend to give these guys rocks, plants, algae, and really anything that will float in the water. These guys really enjoy plants that will nourish them and protect them. And the plants will serve as hiding spots for weaker or smaller fish that may fall prey to bullying. And then we have goldfish. So goldfish, most people know who they are. They're fairly social fish. Unless they are in competition over food, they're basically pretty passive. These guys have a tendency to recognize individuals who are going to feed them. They do enjoy seeing the people in their environment. And one thing some people may not know about goldfish is that they love to destroy things. So if they're in a tank with live plants, they will chew them up and they will disappear. So, it's good to basically provide goldfish some, substrate to dig if that's possible, but also great to provide them artificial foliage just to sort of mimic their natural environment and to give them places to sort of, interact, in their environment. And sometimes you will see fish actually chase each other in their tank and sort of graze along other fish as well. And then we've got the western painted turtle. So these guys are a semi-aquatic species. They enjoy basking and swimming. Like goldfish, these guys learn to recognize who's going to feed them. So they will gather and swim towards you in anticipation for food items. Most turtles don't like to be handled, but they do like to see you. So turtles love to chase live food. They also like to float around, on grassy pads, logs, things like that. These guys are naturally curious, so it is great to have items for them to interact with. They love to bask, so we do have to provide them, an area for basking, also some heat lamps and some UVB lamps that, mimic the sun. Great for these guys to have areas to hide as well. And these guys are quite active, so they love to have a variety of food items, some of which can include live feed items that they can sort of chase around in their tank. And then lizards. So we have a variety of different lizards in our facility. Cohabitation is really important for these guys, but we do not mix species. That can be very dangerous to do. But really important for lizards to give them a place to explore. We give these guys multiple hides, lots of foliage, dense foliage, areas to burrow. We allow them an area for misting if they're a tropical species. And then, lots of things to climb upon, branches, hammocks, rocks, things like that. One thing that these guys love too is a variety diet and also live feed. So we do give these guys pinhead crickets, little tiny crickets, and wingless or flightless fruit flies so they can chase them around in their enclosure and just really mimic sort of their natural behavior within their space. So that is it on my end. Thanks, everybody.
Wow. Oh, wait. Oh, wait. There we go. Finally, the button worked for me. Sorry, Christine. Oh, there we go. It's giving me fits. This is half the fun of a video call. Things should go terribly wrong halfway through to keep us all on our toes. That was a marvelous presentation. Thanks for sharing all that. And what really cool work you do. I love any effort to highlight enrichment as a topic in general. It's not something that we get the chance to feature very often on Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants, but it's so important. And so I'm so glad we've taken the chance today to highlight some really great stuff. And thank you for joining us from the UTSC perspective as well. Christine, I'm going to take us in with Q&A in a minute, be able to bring back Mary Ellen and Morgan as well. We've got a group of live classes from all over the continent today. So I'm going to start with Miss Van Oyen's class joining us in just a second in British Columbia. Mr. McEwen, you're after that. If you are on YouTube, both in the Toronto Zoo or Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants channel, please share questions in the chat. I'm going to take as many as I can here over the next 20 minutes. But let's head to BC first. Welcome in, Miss Van Oyen's group. Hi, guys.
Hunter, come on up.
Hey, Hunter.
Are the animals friendly to you? Or like the zoo?
Yeah, at the zoo, are the animals friendly to you guys? Mary Ellen Morgan. You want to unmute? There we go. Oh, they're coming. They've almost answered when they get the mute working.
Oh, there we go. Sorry about
that.
Go. We are in front of now Aurora and Nikita, so we've switched angles. So this is actually Juno's mom and her aunt that we're in front of now. And I always like to stress when we get this question is, are they friendly? We do have wild animals here. So they are still very much a wild animal. They're not like your dog or your cat that you have at home. That being said, some of them are more friendly to their keepers or more interested in people than others. Particularly like Morgan was mentioning, our young bears here were all hand raised and bottle fed. Same thing, we've had a couple other animals who have had to have assistance from keepers and vets to be raised. So they tend to be a little bit more closely linked to a keeper who took care of them at a young age. But we do try and keep them as wild as possible. Any danger animal, you have to have a barrier between you and that animal to work with them at all times. And there are several around the zoo that even though they've lived here, I've known them for years, their keepers know them, I wouldn't trust them to turn my back on them.
Yeah. So I'm glad we highlighted the nuance there, and what a great shot with the polar bears there. Wow. We're going to head to Mr. McEwen's class joining us at Mackenzie Lake School. Welcome in Alberta, guys. If you want to unmute your mic, you are good to go. Hey.
Hi, my name is Hamid, and my question is, where did you find the polar bear and where did you get it?
Ooh, good question.
Okay. Yeah, so good question. So there's a couple different ways that animals can come into zoos. The most common and preferred way nowadays is by captive breeding programs. So we've mentioned in past videos about something called an SSP, which is a species survival plan. And that's, I kind of think of it like a dating app for animals in captivity. But there's other ways as well. And in historically ways that, we don't really try and do anymore is they've come from the wild. Now, this can happen for a couple different ways. Aurora and Nikita, actually here in front of us right now, are from the wild. And unfortunately, 21 years ago, they were found up north by themselves as orphaned cubs. So something has happened to their mother. We weren't sure if it was hunting or seasonal or like just climate related, but they were abandoned and left in the cold alone. And they were too young to survive on their own. So they were brought here to the Toronto Zoo where they lived out their life. So unfortunately, they couldn't be reintroduced back into the wild once they were hand raised. Yeah. And then the other 3 bears that we have were all born here.
Fantastic. Great story. I always love when we highlight stories of things that were in a situation where they otherwise wouldn't have survived and they end up as animal ambassadors at a zoo or aquarium instead. And we always get this question in zoo programs. I want to encourage all our classes, when you're done this program, look up something called CAZA in Canada or AZA across the United States accreditation. And what it means is that the animals are at the highest standard of animal care. They're sourced usually, as Mary Ellen mentioned, from captive breeding programs in zoos. So if something is accredited with one of these, if you look up your local zoo, wherever you happen to be joining from, and it has this accreditation, you can be pretty assured that they're not going out and just capturing animals from the wild. They're not trading in illegal animals. And so sometimes you have smaller places that don't necessarily adhere to those standards. And it's really important that you go to zoos and aquaria that have that in place. So great question, guys. Madam Stephanie, I'll come to you in 2 quick seconds. We got 2 great quick questions on YouTube for us, Mary Ellen. So our first is from Mr. Till's class. What is the polar bear's favorite toy? Is it the ball, the tree?
That's a great question. So they do have different personalities. Hudson, one of our male bears, he loves sticks. He is a big fan of them. Any stick of any size. You can actually see in here, there's a bunch of sticks in this cave. I can probably bet money that the girls didn't bring them in. Hudson did the last time he was in here. They absolutely love them. I think Juno, though, what would you say, Morgan? I feel like she really liked the ball.
Juno likes the toys more than the natural things, I'd say. She's much more interested in like actual toys, things that she can push and chase after. She's got a bit more of the zoomies than the other bears.
Okay. I like that the stick is the option, though. It's a classic toy. I like stick, personally. One more from YouTube. Miss Gale's class wants to know this terrifying question. They're grade 1. They want to know how high the bears can jump, and can they jump clear out of their space? Could you be standing and have the bear leap at you? Could that happen or not?
That is a wonderful question. Polar bears specifically are the largest type of bear. We've had a male here who can get up to about just under 1,500 pounds, so 1,500 pounds when he's in his full weight. And you might notice here that there's some water and then a really tall wall and then some more glass on top of it. We have what's called bubblers in the water at all times, because if the ice did freeze over, the bears, even Juno, our smallest bear, can reach up her paws to the top of that wall. So we always make sure there's fresh, like circulating water so it doesn't freeze. And so there's no even option for it. And then if we look over here, we're in a cave right now, but this is a rock wall. And they can't climb the way a raccoon or a squirrel can, but they could pull themselves up somewhere. So we have lots of tall walls to make sure that doesn't happen.
I literally never have thought about the bubbler in the polar bear exhibit that way. I wonder if that was learned from experience somewhere in the world, but that is fascinating.
Hopefully not here.
Definitely. Let's go to Madam Stephanie's class, joining us in Milton. If you guys want to unmute your mic, come on in. Miss Logan, I'm coming to you next. Hey.
How often do polar bears swim for?
How do they sleep for?
Oh, how long do they sleep for or swim for?
Oh, sleep or swim? We can
My student asked for how many times does they swim?
Swim for. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to take this one because it's a bit more of our behavior research that we actually did very recently. So the polar bears are a lot less active in those warm months, as you can imagine. They need to conserve a lot of their energy. So what they'll do is they'll eat and then they'll sleep, but they won't waste their energy on swimming. You would think that when it's hot, they would actually like to swim to cool down, but it takes a lot more energy that they don't want to waste. So the polar bears, you'll actually find them swimming a lot more when it's cold out. So I don't know exactly how often they can go in and out as they please. They have the free option to. But in the summer, you'll only find them swimming maybe an hour total of the whole day. Whereas in the winter, they're a lot more active. I don't know if you have more to add.
No, so that's spectacular from the zoo angle. I want to know, we did a program with Polar Bears International the other day, and this question was asked. And so polar bears have been observed many dozens of kilometers offshore. So their Latin name literally means sea bear. They're considered a marine mammal, and they can be like 20 plus kilometers away from the nearest landmass. They can swim that far, which is quite incredible. We certainly couldn't do that the way that they do in nowhere near as cold water as they can. So very, very spectacular animal. Miss Logan's class, I know you guys are virtual. I'm going to come to you now. You can unmute your mic. A quick note, given your setup, that your kids might think you're muted when you're not, but you're good to go with me, and you can share any question on behalf of your class.
Awesome. Thank you. This is from our student Fatima, and she wonders, when it's summer, where do the polar bears go? And do the enrichments change in the summer versus when it's colder?
Ooh.
What a great question. They definitely do. So they are in the same exhibits. We have 3 exhibits for our 5 polar bears, and some of them live in pairs, like Aurora and Nikita here. So they come out together. The bears always have access to a source of water if they do want to cool down. They also have access to an air-conditioned house. So not only do we cool the water, we put AC in their house for them. And good question about the enrichments. They'll still get their standard, you know, their sticks, their favorite items there. But we also love to make them fishsicles, which sounds way cuter than it actually is. But imagine, you know, you're outside running around playing in the summertime. You want to come inside, have some ice cream or a freezy to cool off. So do the bears. So a lot of our big carnivores will get a fishsicle, which is basically just broth, ice, and their favorite fish thrown in together, all frozen up.
Thank you for my newly recurring Christmas nightmare, Mary Ellen. I'm going to head to Mr. Kurt's class. They're joining us. If you guys want to unmute your mic in Virginia, Kersey Creek, come on in and take us away with a question. Hey, guys. Let's see.
When did you get Juno?
When did you get Juno?
So Juno was born here. This is actually her mom right in front of us, Aurora. And she was born 6 years ago. She's actually born on November 11th, so Remembrance Day. And because of that, she's actually been adopted by the Royal Canadian Army, and she holds an honorary ranking, I believe, of corporal in the Army. She was a private, and now she's a corporal.
Best unexpected story of the day. Thank you for that one. Miss Fisher's class, Carsonville, Michigan. If you guys want to come on in, and then we'll head to Miss Mustard's next. Hey guys, hi.
Hello, he's coming.
Perfect. Take your time, man.
This is Justin.
Hey, Justin.
How long did they live for?
Yeah.
Great question. So we talk about this in a lot of our videos, that some animals living in captivity can have a different life expectancy than animals who are living in the wild. And that's just due to, we've talked about it before, but polar bears have a very harsh life from the get-go. They have to survive a lot in some pretty intense temperatures. And here they don't have to compete for that. We make sure they have all the snacks and food they need, the health care, the veterinary care that they need, the enrichment. But on average, if a polar bear can survive their first couple years, which are arguably their hardest years out there in the world, they can live to be about 25 or 30. So the girls here were born in about 2000, so they're 21, 22 years old. And so they're on the older side, but I'd say they're middle-aged. They're like adults.
Cool. Great question, guys. All right, we're going to head to Brampton, right down the road from you guys at the zoo. Miss Mustard's class, if you guys want to come in with one question to wrap up our first round, you're good to go. Hi, guys.
How much does a polar bear weigh exactly?
And how much?
Ooh, how big are they?
Nice. So yeah, so they are the largest type of bear. And if you missed our video that we talked about last time, we really focused on nutrition with Jesse when we were with him last month. And Morgan also mentioned today that bears go through a huge fluctuation depending on the time of year. So if it's really cold or really hot out, that can change their weight, their energy levels, what they do in a day. On average, though, because they're the biggest, I'd say they're about 1,000 pounds. So if you've ever seen a really big piano, they're about the same weight as a grand piano.
Very, very cool. Guys, we are at the 38-minute mark, so time flies and you're having fun. I'm going to take a couple questions from our YouTube friends and then pick one class at random live. I know I'd love to take questions from all of you, but I know many of you have to go to your next period soon. So let's head to YouTube for a quick minute. Let's see. Miss Barker's class wants to know, do the bears hibernate? And if so, where?
Yeah, great question. So polar bears do hibernate, but it's mostly with their young. So if they have babies in the wild, they will. And they'll build themselves a den. Our grizzly bears here, though, do hibernate. So Shente and Samson have actually gone down for their hibernation, and we will not see them until March. So only a few keepers will go in and check on them every couple of days just to make sure they're okay. They might wake up and eat a couple snacks here and there, but they are pretty much out for the winter time. Whereas our polar bears, none of them have babies right now. They're happy to stay awake. They're getting food on a regular basis still, getting enrichment things to do. So they are up and active.
Very, very cool. Let's head to Miss Dunn's class and Madam F's class. The same question from both, and that is, how fast can the polar bears run?
Oh, I love that question. And we're going to head just outside really quickly to just give a bonus animal for today, one who loves this kind of weather as well. My standard answer for anyone who asks me if they can outrun an animal at the zoo is no. Usually not in a sprint. So most animals can outrun a human if you're racing from here to there. What you want to do is race them in a marathon. Now, personally, I couldn't run a marathon, but there are humans out there who can. And humans as a species, we are built for long distance running, whereas most animals are built for short sprinting to catch food. The only one you could probably outrun easily is a tortoise.
And even then, they're wily. Sometimes they surprise you with bursts of speed.
Exactly. They got tricks up their sleeve.
I looked it up while you were chatting. So 40 kilometers an hour is a polar bear. So it's almost twice as fast as Usain Bolt. So the fastest runner ever in a straight sprint, the polar bear can run twice as fast as them, which is unbelievable. By the way, on the note, because I have like a minute here and I get to be a nerd about it, humans are actually the best animal in the world at long distance running. Like that is actually our sort of innate ancestral hunting style, is that we will chase things till they literally collapse with exhaustion and then we'll spear it again. So it's very, very cool. Some really amazing science around that. And that's your nerdy follow-up for the day. We're going to take one more question. Madam Stephanie's got a student like right at the camera. So I'm going to come to you guys for one final question before we wrap up. And Milton, come on in, guys. Hey.
Do the polar bears get used to a bit of a warm weather?
Great question. Yeah. So here in Toronto, we go through 4 very distinct seasons. And that means 4 really distinct temperature differences throughout the year. And the animals that have been born and raised here, they do adjust pretty well. A new animal coming in might have a harder time, and we'll make sure they have, we'll do more behavioral studies on them to make sure they're adjusting. But on average, the ones who are born here, they're pretty used to it at this point.
Before we dive in and just say a big thank you and farewell, I want to note Truffles and Tea, who's our favorite person on YouTube, as they've been involved the whole time from Etobicoke. They just wanted to give you a shout out for bringing us to the Arctic Wolves. Oh my, the Arctic Wolves. So thank you for that. Makes it so much better when we get multiple animals in. Yes. I want to note for all our students again, thank you so much for joining us for this program, for our entire Toronto Zoo UTSC series. Christine, I'll bring you back in to say hi and farewell as well. But if people want to check out all these programs, you can head to our YouTube channel. Everything we've ever done with the zoo is there. TorontoZoo.com has all sorts of information about the work that they do broadly. And of course, if you're particularly keen on the Giving Tree and holiday enrichment in general, head to TorontoZoo.com/holiday enrichment. Some amazing opportunities there to help out the animals at the zoo. They're one of my very favorite organizations in the world. Now, Christine, you're new to this. Mary Ellen and Morgan, you've heard the cheer all sorts of times, but we're going to bring in all our classes today. Big thank you and farewell. So Miss Van Oyen's class, Mr. Kurd, Miss Fisher, Miss Miss Mustard's class. Come on in. Thank you so much, everybody. And have a wonderful day.